In one of my recent videos, I showed an attempt to duplicate some of the functionality of a domino joinery jig by Ola Harmonious, where I tried to add a new way of dealing with adjusting the height based on dashboard's track stars on the side of the bench. The concept was unproven and I hadn't tried it in practice. Well, I'm here to report that I don't think it's going to work very well. Well, this thing I called the Overboard, it certainly looks pretty, and how could it not? All I've done here is taken two professionally made products and screwed them together. But in practice, I already have significant concerns. The bottom line is, I think that little table is too small, and trying to use the Trackstar height adjustability doesn't bring as much benefit as I hoped it would. I've had to come around to the conclusion that Ola's approach is pretty good. Both Ola and the Veritas version of his jig use shims to achieve height adjustment. They're predictable, they're accurate. Height adjustability was just one of the two major thoughts I had when I saw the Harmonious domino jig. The other one was about the table surface. Basically, Ola's jig is a table surface with a mount for the domino and a place to mount workpieces and jigs and clamps to work with them. Well, an MFT is also a place to mount workpieces and the jigs and clamps to work with them. So why can't I use the MFT surface I already have instead of building a new one? I did spend some time trying to figure out if I could mount the domino directly to the MFT surface, but I didn't take that path very far. I quickly zeroed in on ideas where I mount the domino to a board and then the board would be mounted to the surface or clamped or whatever. In fact, my starting point here is the very same mounting board I was using in the previous video. Of course, I've immediately started creating a problem, and that is I want to use the MFT surface and its doghole grid, and by mounting the domino on a board, I've moved it further away from that surface that I want to use. Just to illustrate, if I were to try and plunge this mortise, the cutter completely misses the workpiece. Obviously, this arrangement isn't much of a problem and may even be a benefit for really thick workpieces, but such things aren't exactly common. So if I'm going to try and cut a mortise in the side of an 18mm piece like I tried earlier, I'm going to have to raise it higher, like put another surface underneath it. But now I've defeated the purpose of using the MFT table because this extra layer is blocking access to the dog holes. And so this is a piece of plywood I used to try out the parf guide. And so I slipped it on here. It's only half-inch, 12mm thick plywood. And I thought, well, maybe if I have just 12mm thicker, would I have full access to the grid below? And the answer, for at least for this kind of clamp, is no. I knew from what people have said that if an MFT top is too thick, this kind of clamp cannot get through. I was hoping 12mm would be okay, and it's not. I can't get this clamp to make the turn. Now, various other kinds of clamps do work, such as this kind. I can put this through both layers, both dog holes, and hold the workpiece down. And the workpiece seems solid enough, but even with two of these, I did some test mortises in this configuration using yet another little piece of plywood as yet another shim. Even with two of these clamps and a test mortise, it's really not held down all that well. The other kind of clamp would do so much better. I reluctantly come to the conclusion that if I want to use the existing MFT table surface to hold workpieces in a Harmonious style domino jig thing, then the domino needs to be mounted at or below the MFT table surface, which means it probably needs to be off the table surface, off to the side. And I already showed that a track star is not the way to do that. So the only option really left is some sort of outrigger thing. One way to set this up, and the most promising idea I have so far, is to take the domino and its mounting board exactly as I had it before and place it in the space between two outriggers. This piece of Baltic birch that the domino is mounted to is literally sitting on the aluminum extrusion track. I'm pleased with how solid the domino is nestled in here. I thought I was going to have to use T-bolts to attach things to the sides here, and I still might, because obviously I would be very sad if somehow the domino slipped down and fell, because it's not supported from below other than these T-tracks. But with the outriggers firmly in place and nicely adjusted, it's very fixed in here well. When the Domino 700 is sitting on a table surface, it cuts a mortise centered 15 millimeters above that table surface. But in this case, I've got it sitting lower than the table surface, so I've actually improved things somewhat. This little aluminum ledge is 19 millimeters lower than the top. So I've lowered the domino 19 millimeters, but then I've raised it back up 12 because of the thickness of the board that it's sitting on. So I've got a net lowering of 7 millimeters, which means the offset I described before, instead of being 15 millimeters, now it's 8, which is actually pretty close to what I want. If I were going to get really fussy in my pursuit of perfection, I would prefer that this be 1 millimeter higher, but it's nearly centered in the board. Not exactly, but pretty close. Returning to the issue of height adjustability, I can address that here in one of two ways. I can either make different mounting boards of different thicknesses for specific cases, or I can make shims that go under this mounting board to raise it up higher. I don't know which I'll do or both. The net change from 15 millimeters of offset is if I take the thickness of this board, subtract it from 19, and then subtract that from 15, that's the resulting center of the mortise. So if I want, for an 18 millimeter piece of wood, if I want my mortise to be exactly centered in the middle at 9, then I need to make a 13 millimeter mounting board, which I'm not going to be able to do with plywood. So I'm actually talking about something I would have to do at the planer joiner with a piece of regular wood. By the way, I'm cutting a 5 millimeter mortise with a Domino 700. And the way I'm doing that is using the adapter from Seneca Woodworking. This is the adapter. This is a Domino 500 5 millimeter cutter. I still have a bunch of stuff I need to figure out here. I need a way of transferring the offset from one side to another, like the clever fence with memory that Ola has. For now, I'm just using these pins. So for this side of the butt joint, I've switched the pins to the other side. How practical is this? Well, it depends on what we mean by practical. There could be two meanings. I think this might be practical for me, but the question of whether this is practical for anyone but me, that's a whole nother thing. If you already have outriggers or some similar way of mounting a domino in a stable configuration just off the edge of your bench, maybe it's practical for you too. I'm feeling kind of clever just because I think I might have solved my own problem, but solving a problem that is applicable to lots of other people, that's a whole nother level of clever. That's Oleg Harmonious clever. His solution is so practical that 2 companies made products based on it. I'm making no such claims about what I've got here. I just think I figured out something that I could probably use, and maybe someone else will find it interesting, so I wanted to share it. Thanks for watching.